Welcome to the Get Organized HQ podcast. I'm your host, Tasha Lawrence. Every week, we share practical strategies for less stress and more peace as we dive into all topics life and home organization. I'm so glad you're here for this week's episode. Well, today I have not one, but two special guests, Ingrid and Lesley, who are the hosts of the Declutter Hub podcast, are sitting down with me today to talk about decluttering and organizing and really how everyone is different when it comes to their needs and their season of life in decluttering. But there are some key principles and practices that can help anyone get decluttered and really think through the process and hopefully make decluttering click so that it works for you and it works in your home and you end up as a result living in the home that you want to live in. Now, Ingrid and Lesley, this is a really exciting time for them. They are actually publishing their very first book. It is called Reset Your Home. If you are listening and you are in the UK, this book, Reset Your Home, is already available to purchase. If you are in the United States, this book is going to be released later this month. I believe June 24th is when it's going to be made available, but it is already available for pre-order. So if you take a listen to this episode, like what you're hearing, and would like to dive into more of what Ingrid and Lesley have to share, then definitely go pre-order that book. It'll show up at your doorstep in a few weeks once it releases, and the link to that is in the show notes. But regardless, I really hope you enjoy listening in on today's conversation. Well, Ingrid and Lesley, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I am looking forward to our conversation, talking about just the different ways of organizing and approaching organizing and thinking about it that work for different personalities, because every single person is different, right? So could y'all go ahead and introduce yourselves, let everyone know who is who, and how y'all connected and started talking about organizing and all of these principles?
Well, we met already back in 2011 when Leslie and I both met at the conference for the Association of Professional Declutterers and Organizers. So there is an association in the US called NAPO. We have one here in the UK called ABDO. And Leslie and I were organizers on cross country. I'm in London, Leslie's in Manchester. We met at the conference and we kind of started being friends and hanging out. And then we met and both went and started on the board of Abdo. And I became president. Lesley was in my board, and we just got on like a house on fire. And after about 5 or 6 years of volunteering, we said, right, we need to go back to our own businesses. We've done enough in the industry and putting everything on the map. But we missed working together. And Lesley called me one day and said, Ingrid, what are we going to do together? I miss hanging out with you. And I said, sounds a plan. And that's kind of how the Declutter Hub was born, because at that time we were still both working in our own businesses. Lesley, Clutter Fairy in Manchester. I was Organize Your House in London. But we then said, why don't we do something online? Right, Lesley?
Yeah, we said let's do something online. We were thinking about doing courses, and then it was important to us really to make sure that we brought what we bring in our one-to-one work with clients into an online space. And so we wanted to give that kind of extra helping hand, which is why the podcast and the membership came from there. So we definitely handhold a little bit more than an online course really. So yeah, but it's an interesting one, isn't it, Ingrid? Because when we met, we're very, very different people, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more as we go through this podcast. So this relationship in principle should never ever work, but somehow it does. We're not quite sure how, but here we are 7-8 years later, still friends, which is a good thing, I think, Tasha.
Absolutely. And I love that, how you described that it's the relationship that shouldn't have worked, right? Because I hear from so many people, even when they're talking about their own relationship with their stuff or their home or with organizing, and it's like, oh, I'm not an organized person. This isn't something that comes naturally. But sometimes the things that you think don't come naturally actually can really click depending on how you look at it. So can you tell me, when did the podcast, like how long ago did the podcast start? How long have y'all been hosts of that?
Well, we kind of started the Declutter, as you said, kind of let's do a course about decluttering and organizing. We have so much knowledge. We were professional organizers for 10 years, but of course, 8 years at the time. And that kind of sorry, that kind of evolved and it became a membership. And then we realized for the website, for the membership, we need to write things. But we
Right.
both realized at the time that writing, especially I'm from the Netherlands originally, so I'm although I'm nearly fluent in English, my thinking is still in Dutch. So
Yes.
writing doesn't go very well for me. I mean, I can of course put a sentence together and put an
Sure.
email together, but writing blogs and stories and things was not my forte at the time. And Leslie said, "Well, you know what, Ingrid, we both love talking. So why don't we, instead of write things, why don't we just talk? Because we're on the phone anyway, day and night. So we might as well record it when we talk about decluttering and organizing." And that's kind of how the podcast was born. And we thought, honestly, Tasha, we thought we're going to do like 40 episodes or
Right.
something. And we're like 340 episodes down the line. We've not
Yes.
missed a week. We've never had the same episode go out.
That's
We
awesome.
There's so much to talk about. So yeah, 7 or 8 years going strong and we're loving it.
Yes, and then that actually translated into y'all writing a book. How did that come to be?
Yeah, I mean, that came about 2 years ago. I mean, you know, Tasha, yourself, what it's like to write a book because you've written books of your own, but I think it was just it they came to us and said, "We've listened to the podcast," and it was actually somebody from Bloomsbury who works in the kind of well-being sector, and so she was listening to
Mhm.
the podcast just, because she wanted to know about decluttering, and, but of cour as she was listening, she was like, "Actually, I think this is gonna translate into her niche in the business in Bloomsbury," which was well-being. She hadn't thought about it because, like many people do, she'd really thought about the practical side of decluttering and not
Mhm.
thought about the emotional response and the sort of well-being side of things. And all of a sudden, as she carried on listening, she was like, I think this is really going to work well as a sort of Bloomsbury Green Tree book, which is the arm that she works for. So she approached us 2.5 years ago because it takes like forever to write a book. I mean, we're quick as
Right.
professional organizers. We're like, okay, let's get this job done. And she's like, yeah, it's called slow publishing and it takes 2 years. I'm like, 2 years? Like, what? And so, but actually, retrospectively, as we look at it needs 2 years to sort of get legs and to get an idea together and to write and create that. So, yeah, we had a fantastic publisher. It was amazing to go through that process. We really feel really privileged to have worked with somebody who can take what we have to offer and give us guidance in terms of structure and things. And we're really, really happy with the way that the book Reset Your Home turned out.
Yeah. So tell me, you mentioned that the publisher that reached out to you is in the well-being area of things. So in your experience as professional organizers and with the experience you have with decluttering, what is the connection there? Like how do you make that jump from the practical, like, well, I don't need this thing, so let's get rid of it, to how that affects just your everyday life and well-being?
I mean, we truly believe it starts there, to be honest with you. So, and I think the mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that it's about the stuff and thinking about it's the chucking away and the sending to donation and all of those things. Now, for us, that's definitely a byproduct almost of decluttering. And you need to
Mhm.
get yourself in that mental headspace before you can decide what to let go of. So, we're firm believers that decluttering is all about the emotions first and then the stuff second. And so, once you've worked out your why, whether why you want to declutter, why it gets you down so much, why it makes you feel so overwhelmed, why you want your house to be different, that's the first steps towards being able to then make those practical steps into actually doing the doing, really. And that's the way, talking about the book, that's the way the book is structured. We very much go into the emotional side of things, the thinking, we call it the thinking, like, what is this emotion that I'm feeling about this bread maker that I've got stuffed in the cupboard? Well, that's an aspirational thing. You bought that because you felt like you wanted to make bread. 2 years down the line, you may or may not have made that bread. Amazing if you did. But if you didn't, you have to recognize that as aspiration so that you then don't make that mistake again. And once you realize it, it then plays into the ability to let it go and then further down the line your clutter mindset and being able then to not buy that again, that kind of thing again. So yeah, we feel like it starts with the emotions really rather than kind of comes after that, if that makes sense.
And what we see as well, Tasha, a lot is that the people who start to look at their big picture goal and then, what's my end goal here? Because a lot of people say, I want to declutter my whole house. Okay, that's why. Why do you want to do this? Because it's like, I want to climb the top of a mountain. Why? So you need to have a big picture goal in mind. I want to do this because I want my grandchildren to come and stay at my house. I want to invite my friends for a coffee. I want to open the door without feeling embarrassed. I want to do my husband and I want to do our hobbies in our spare room. Whatever it is, what's your big picture goal? And once you've got that, you can say, okay, how am I going to get there? By breaking it down. That's where our reset your home systems comes in, because we say, okay, this is where you need to start and this is the path you need to follow. Not, this is the only way, but follow our structure as best as you can. And then you can kind of work through your house. Because what a lot of people think, they think about stuff and they think about the hardest area, the hardest room, the hardest thing, and they want to get started there. My spare room is like a room of doom. It's a dumping ground. I'm going to dive in this weekend and get this done. And then they do that. And then after 2 hours, they look around and go, oh my word. Why was this a good idea? It's messier than it was before. And we say, if you want to tackle those harder rooms or those harder areas, you need to start in easier rooms and you need to build up your decluttering muscle. You
Mhm.
need to understand, you need to learn how to break it down. You need to learn how to ask yourself decluttering questions. You need to learn how to categorize, declutter, organize, think about storage in easier rooms, normally a kitchen and a bathroom, because there's less sentimental items there. And then you build it up slowly but surely. And we focus on all of that. And then we say, okay, now you're ready to think about, where is this stuff going to go? Am I going to recycle it, donate it, give it away, possibly sell a few things? But you need to have a plan in place. So we focus a lot about the process, and actually the decluttering itself, when you start to understand your own emotions, gets easier. And what you then see is, when the clutter goes down, people start to think about, wow, I have more space, I have more room. I'm going to think about what I'm shopping. Why am I shopping? Why am I spending this money? Because I already have one and I know where it is.
Right.
Why? What am I going to do with the time that I've now got available to actually do all the crafts that I've been wanting to do all these years? But those are things that happen later. You won't see that in the beginning, but
Mhm.
you see that. But people who stick with our system, they start to change their mindset. And that's when the whole well-being, they start to find the time for all the things they've been wishing for years, that they could do them. But
Yes.
that takes time.
Yeah, I love how you compared that to a muscle. And I feel like there's so much to unpack in what you were sharing there. Not only that this is a muscle that's being strengthened, but also that the results come later. The number of analogies between like fitness and working out and exercise and organizing and decluttering. It's funny how often I feel like that comes up, whether it's in YouTube videos or podcast episodes, but it really is true that this is something that can become more comfortable, more natural, something that's easier to do. But just like you said, it may not have all of the results that you're looking for. The first time you go to the gym, you're not like, great, like I feel healthy, I feel great, I don't need to go back. Everything's great. I mean, I wish it was like that.
Yeah.
But so I know in your book, Reset Your Home, you talk about thinking and doing. And Lesley, maybe you can tell us, like, do you find that people lean more naturally into one or the other of those two categories that you kind of break this process of decluttering down into?
I think it's really interesting because I think everybody's naturally leans towards the doing side of things because that's what we read about all of the time and things like
Mhm.
that. So I think people very much think about it as a stuff clearance kind of process.
Right.
And then I think once you introduce the concepts of thinking about things in an emotional way, all of a sudden the light bulb moments start to happen and people are like, oh, never really thought about it like that. And just
Mhm.
that process of understanding, coupled with the ability to say it's okay if this doesn't happen overnight. We're talking there, Tasha, about decluttering muscle. The most important thing is, in the same way that when you're lifting weights, and you need to feel in control of that, you can't overdo it. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And to know that it's okay if you don't do, and to know that feel control in the decisions that you make. And if you're not ready to make that decision to let something go, leave it for another day. It's about finding that balance. Of course, we need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit in the same way that we do with exercise, but let's not push ourselves too far, because if we do, then we will just stop and go, I'm never doing this again. This is too hard. And so it's about finding that balance, and that takes time. It's all about taking time. But of course, people don't want it to take time. People are like, I need to sort my house out. I'd like to do that this weekend. Thank you very much. And we're like, I know that's what you want to do. And I want to be like a 5-stone lighter tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. And so we need to be a little bit patient to make sure that that's what happens in the end. And so, by
Yeah.
sort of by prolonging the process a little bit and by taking it one step at a time, the results are much greater and much more kind of long term, I think.
I can't tell you how many times I have held on to something that I wasn't quite ready to declutter. And 6 months or a year or 3 years later, when I'm going back through that same closet again, that's when I'm like, oh, 3 years ago, I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to part with this for so many reasons. I mean, I remember when my husband and I first bought our house, I held on to a lot of decor pieces because I really didn't know. We were still doing some updates to the house and we didn't have everywhere decorated. And so I didn't want to get rid of these things because I wasn't sure what we were going to use. And so your talk about like going slow, sometimes it's almost just realizing that it is adopting a lifestyle that's okay with analyzing, thinking about what you have and letting things go in their season, and that things have those different seasons for sure. But that's definitely something I've noticed to be true for myself. So I would love to talk about the similarities and differences y'all have found in yourselves when it comes to organizing and decluttering and what works for you. You said that you have a really unlikely friendship. So, does that copy over into how you approach organizing and decluttering your homes, or are you pretty similar in those things? Ingrid, maybe you can tell us that.
Um, well, there are, of course, there are similarities. Leslie and I are both, tidy people. We are both organized. We both love velvet hangers, for example. But
Yeah.
what you can really see is that both as business partners, but also in our homes, we do things differently. And I think that's what our members and our membership appreciate so much as well. That no way is the right way or the wrong way. For example, I love folding. I get much pleasure out of it. I love to neatly fold t-shirts and underwear and pajamas and bedding and towels and things like that. And Leslie's like, yeah, you know what? As long as I've got all my underwear in the drawer and I just rummage, and I'm like, rummage through. What are you talking about? Yeah. She's like, as long as I can find it, I can rummage through and find the thing I need. And I'm like, oh no, there's no rummaging in my house. You know what I mean? Everything's like neatly stacked. My towels as well. I'm very specific. But the thing is, why our members love it is because they can kind of go, I'm a rummager too, or oh, actually, I like to see the neatly folded things, and I like Ingrid's video of how she folds, so I can give that a go as well because I can see how folding things the same way can make things look neater. But we're not saying you have to fold or you have to hang. But that's one of the examples that I'm sure Leslie has a whole long other list of things because we are actually really different in lots of ways.
I feel like I
Yeah.
need to kind of come back on the whole rummaging through the drawers. I think you've oversold it slightly. So they're neatly in a drawer, they're just not folded, Tasha. So I think she's kind of making out to be like a
She's
chaotic
making
drawer.
it sound
Essentially,
worse
I'm
than it
like,
is, right?
it's actually okay. I am a professional organizer, but I just don't. I'm not bothered about folding stuff. And so,
Yeah.
but to be fair, it's interesting actually, Tasha, because as I've got a little bit older, and it's all about these transitions. And so you were talking before about seasonally deciding when to declutter things. We're very different, aren't we? In our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, our 50s. Life changes. My kids have kind of moved out. And now's the time where I've never really been a decanter. So I've never really been somebody to put things into, fancy jars and labels and stuff. I'm like, it's good enough if I can get to it. It's containerized. Bob's your uncle. But now I'm like, you know what? Maybe now's the time that I am ready to decant some pasta and put some labels on nice jars because I've got a little bit
Mhm.
more time. It makes me tick a little bit more than it did. So the very thing that I didn't do for the last 20 years, I've suddenly decided that now's the time that I could do that. And Ingrid will be really glad to hear that actually I have started to fold in a small level my knickers. And so you would be very proud of me, Ingrid, and they're not rummaged in a huge heap. But it's those kind of things that really, we are quite different because for me, it's really about, Ingrid comes from a hotel in a background in hotel housekeeping. So
Mhm.
that's why where the towels and all of this stuff comes from, because it's very precise by its nature. Whereas I come from a background of kind of a little bit more like good enough, let's not go down a perfectionist route, let's just
Mhm.
work this stuff out. And I think,
Yeah.
as Ingrid says, both can work. And as long as you can find what you need to find and you don't have an excess of it and it's not overwhelming you, then that's the job done for me. And I think
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
important. It's, horses for courses, as they say. Everybody can do what makes sense for them. And so, yeah, so I do have very nicely folded knickers now in my drawer.
I love that, but I gotta admit, I love the image of you rummaging through drawers, even as a professional organizer,
Yeah.
because I do think it goes to show that there is not one definition of organized. There's not
Yeah.
only one way to do it. Something we say a lot around Get Organized HQ is that you really only need two things for a space to be organized. You need to know where things are, or the people in your house who are using those things should know where the things are and where they go. And it needs to make you happy. Like, it
Yeah.
needs to be a space that you feel at peace about. And so if
Mhm.
you feel at peace tossing your t-shirts in a drawer without folding them, like, that is organized.
Yeah.
Even though it'll probably make Ingrid have heart palpitations if she comes and opens the drawer, but that's okay because
Yeah.
you know where your t-shirts are. You know how
Yeah.
to find them. You have
Yeah.
the number of t-shirts you want. The drawer opens and closes. Like, all of that is fine. And I just think that is so important to be said that
Yeah.
some of the pictures we see on Instagram or things being color coded or things being file folded, like, they're beautiful systems. But like you were saying, Leslie, they take time. I
Yeah.
think sometimes we don't realize how much time some of
Yeah.
these beautiful, elaborate organizational systems actually take. And if the point of our organization is to make our lives easier, we can actually do a really good job of making our lives a lot harder in the long run
Mm.
if we're trying
Yeah.
to organize in a way that doesn't fit with our
Yeah.
personality.
I
Exactly,
think
and that's the
yeah.
problem, isn't it? Oh, sorry, Ingrid. That's the important thing, is to be realistic, because we all want to do that, and that's the thing with the decanting of the cereals
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff that I was talking about before. It wasn't realistic for my life before because I was managing 3 kids and a job and all of those kind of things. And whilst I'm busy now, I'm allowed and allowing myself time to spend time doing those
Mhm.
things. And so it's about a realistic assessment of where you are. And I think we can be forgiven for thinking that we want it to be like that, because that's a lot of the imagery that we're seeing out
Yeah.
there. But actually, we need to be honest about the management of that system, as you say, Tash, because it takes a long time to get there.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's what you see indeed as in socials all the time, right? It's like you see this before, you see a snap of a finger, and then you see the after, but you don't see the amount of time it takes. And when
Yeah.
people come to us and it's like, I want all these beautiful things, we're like, let's first think about having just a little bit less. We are not about minimalist or maximalist or color coordinating or whatever. We are about a place for everything in its place, and that you can find the stuff that you have so you can use what you have, and you
Mhm.
don't have all these beautiful things in your houses. Because what we still see a lot here is these leftovers, especially from after the Second World War mindset of make, do, and mend, and I'm going to keep it just in case.
Mhm.
And although we love make, do, and mend because it's great, I mean, I've got a fabulous husband who can fix just about everything, and we do because we want to make stuff last longer. But
Right.
if you can then not find the things you have because you have so many just in case items,
Mhm.
and you end up buying stuff again because you can't find it, that's where it goes wrong. And we're like, just look at this. Is not about the numbers game. This is not about how many should you have in your house, like
Mhm.
how many towels do you have. It depends on your space, it depends on the amount of people. Do you do sports 6 times a week, and do you need a lot more towels than people who just need a couple for showering because they've got other hobbies. Everything is different, and we can't copy our own homes into our members or our clients' homes. What we can do is make them think. What makes sense to you? How often do you have people to come and stay at your house? Do
Mhm.
you need to keep your whole guest bathroom full of products for that guest that comes in once a year for 2 nights? They're
Right.
probably bringing their own stuff. And yes, it's nice to have a basket with a couple of bits, but you don't need to have a fully stocked pantry.
Yeah.
I have a little shop across the road from where I live. I don't need to have 14 tins of soup. I can just walk across. So it depends on the location where you live.
Yes.
The US, Canada, other countries, Australia, there are huge shops are longer to drive. You have to be smarter. But here in the UK, everything is close by. So you can be now there's a lot of things that come into factor how you set up your home and what makes sense, but mainly how much square footage do you have?
Yeah. And I think that is the beauty of a well organized space when you find what works for you. I
Yeah,
also think it's the challenge of getting online, looking for help to get organized and help to declutter, which I think is really valuable. There are some great ideas out there. There are
yeah,
things I never would have thought of. You get on Pinterest or Instagram or YouTube and it's like, I am totally stealing that. But the struggle is if I'm watching a video of someone who has 7 children, they live on a small homestead 50 miles from the nearest town. And so they have essentially a grocery store in their basement. And I'm like, whoa, like
Yeah.
imagine if I had all of that, but like I'm 5 minutes from the grocery store. Okay. Like
yeah,
anything I need, I could walk. I'm not as close as you, Ingrid. It would be a little bit of a longer walk. But like I could even walk there if I had to. And so realizing once again, what season of life are you in?
yeah,
What does your family need? And remembering that the goal is to make your life easier, less stressed,
yeah,
more peaceful, and that so many of these things when it really comes down to it, um like the decanted pantry that Leslie has mentioned a few times, it can actually become super stressful because now I have all these containers and I bought another type of cereal, but we weren't done with the first type. And so I only have one container to decant this into. So now I have a box of cereal next to my container of cereal and just thinking through the logistics of 6 months from now, is this
yeah,
still going to be bringing me less stress and more peace? Or is it going to be something that has just become another thing on my to do list to maintain, another thing that's looking at me, making me feel like I'm behind in my own
yeah,
home? Because that is not what you want at all.
yeah. What we want is a home that works for you in your current life,
Right.
right? You can't have a home that was for your life 10 or 15 years ago, or your future life that you want to you want to have. You want, of course, there's always some things that, like, if I've got some more time, I love to do that hobby, or and it's nice to think of something that you want to that you're working towards, but mainly the items in your home should work for the current you. And that works with clothes, with books, with your decorations, your paintings, your ornaments, the kitchen items in your cupboards. Maybe you used to have indeed a family with 7 kids, and you need to have 200 pieces of Tupperware
Yeah.
because everybody had to have lunches and you had a whole stocked freezer. But now maybe nearly 6 out of 7 have flown the nest, are setting up their own homes. Do you still need all the volumes, right?
Right.
And I think thinking that through a little bit and just thinking, okay, what is important for me? What do I want to spend my time on? Because
Yes.
of course, the more stuff you have, the more time it takes to keep house. The cleaning is harder, the tidying is harder. If the volumes are just a little bit lower and everything can just be put away to where it belongs at the end of the day, you're on top of laundry, and you're not like, I've got 11 loads to still do. It's just that will already gives you a calmer feeling. And when you've done the laundry, you can put the laundry away because there's space in the cupboards. A
Yeah.
lot of people solve their laundry problem by buying more socks and underwear because they think that's, I no, the problem is that the stuff can't, there's a problem somewhere in the laundry cycle. Either it can't be put away, so it gets put on the floor somewhere, and then is it dirty? Is it clean? What was going on here? But people then try to solve it by buying more stuff. And we say, no, you actually need to have less stuff, more organization, so that laundry cycle can flow. And we see that everywhere. People who double stack books on a bookcase, the books behind do not exist because you can't see them anymore, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, between the two of you, is there something you can think of that maybe one of you is in a season or just has the preference of, I want more of this thing, and that's helpful to me in my season of life, and maybe the other is like, no, like get me less of that. Is there like a specific example you can think of that?
Like everything. So I like everything. So Ingrid doesn't like to shop at all, basically, and I do like to shop. So I'm quite good, So I don't have an excess of things, but I like to buy clothes, and I will buy them, and I'll cycle through things. So Ingrid is quite sort of measured, I would say, would be the word that I'd use in terms of the things that she buys, much more than me. So I would probably be a little bit more frivolous with things, generally, and I live with somebody in the house and a whole household of people who like to shop, and so I'm
Yeah.
constantly trying to cycle through things. So it's definitely not happening so much in my house with the people that live here, but I still try. So I think, yeah, there's definitely, I'm the kind of shopper out of the two of us, but not to excess,
Oh, sure.
but Ingrid is kind of like really not a shopper at all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's basically
Yeah.
it. Do you know, as you were talking there, Tasha, I think the nice thing about all these things, and as Ingrid was talking about the different sort of styles of organizing and different things that are available online to see, to watch, to learn from, I think that what's different now for people is that this information is accessible to people. And so, people can look at, what you and Laura are doing at GOHQ, or what other organizers are doing, or what we're doing at the Declutter Hub, and can just go, I've got different options here depending on what's going to resonate with me. And that's what I think is so fantastic, that we've got different people with different ideas, and some are going to resonate with some and some are not. And it's about finding your people and what's going to resonate with you. And that's why we're so lucky. And, there's a lot of, we've been sort of being a little bit down on social media sometimes, but, when you find a community of people that are your people, that say the kinds of things that you want them to, that you want to hear, that make sense to you, it's just such a fantastic place to be. I'm sure you're super proud of your communities. We're proud of ours. Undoubtedly there will be crossover, but I think it's amazing that people have now got choice. That means that they're no longer judged, that they have a way out, that they can work things out for themselves, and they've got the tools and tricks that they need. And I love that so much.
Yeah. So tell me, you have this book. It's available in the UK. So Reset Your Home. If you live in the UK, you can already purchase it. At the time this episode is releasing, I think it's still only for pre-order in the United States, but it's coming towards the end of June. So what can people expect? Like, is this book for a specific type of organizing style or season? Like, what can they expect to find and learn from your book, Reset Your Home?
I mean, if people want to declutter that, it's there as a guide. Okay, so it's there as a guide that's going to take them step by step through every single room in their house. It's going to, talk about the sort of style, what their emotional connection, what style of kind of clutter person that they are. Then it's going to take them step by step, and we've already spoken about the fact that we believe in starting in easier rooms first, and it's going to build them all the way up to at the end to talk about sentimental items and things like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, and it's going to give them a thinking section and a doing section. So it really is a step by step guide. It's kind of, we try and put humor in there. We're quite light-hearted, as you can probably see today. And so it's really jam-packed with really useful examples of things, because sometimes
Yeah.
we need to bring things to life. And I think because Ingrid and I have been doing this for so long, sort of 15 years each, we're like old school, old school organizers. We've got so many examples that really resonate with people, and that's important to us to bring the whole process to life.
Yeah.
So people are loving it already here in the UK. Got so much great feedback and reviews. So we're super proud of it, and just hope that it's that kind of pick up and put down thing that means that you can take it through your whole house.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put you on the spot because I ask the same question of everyone at the end of every podcast episode. And sometimes I remember to warn them, and sometimes I don't. So I did not tell you this going in. But I'd love to hear from both of you. So I guess just whichever one of you has an answer come to mind first, you can jump in. What is one thing? It can be a thing, like an item in your house or a habit or a routine. What is one thing that's bringing you less stress and more peace right now?
I think for me, it's definitely, doing my daily resets. That's something that we talk about all the time in our membership and also in our book, that you have to daily do little things around your home. For example, in the morning, the dishwasher gets unloaded. The breakfast items get put away. In the evening after dinner, the recycling gets put out. The kitchen counters get wiped. We call them non-negotiables. These happen every day in my home. Every day, a load of laundry goes on in the morning. So I stay on top of things. And it makes me happy. Why? Because if I do these 5 to 10 minute jobs every day, 2, 3 times per day,
Yeah.
it saves me in the weekend. So in
Hmm.
the weekend, I don't have a backlog of massive chores, and I can then do a little bit of extra topping up here and there. In the weekend, I do my folding and I put it all away. Every a couple of weeks, I do a bit of ironing and I can put it away. But by doing those daily resets, that's for me, non-negotiable. It happens every day. However busy I am, it gets done.
I love that. Yeah. How about you, Leslie?
Do you know what my favorite? I mean, I would have said a daily reset. Ingrid stole my thunder, but I would have said a daily reset as well. And
She jumped in there
I
too
knew
quick.
she was going to say it, so I was like, she's going to say a daily reset. But I think the thing in my house that makes me happiest, and this is really a strange thing to say, but I lived in the States as well for a couple of years in my kind of 30s, and that's where I came across the concept of an upstairs laundry room. And so
Yeah.
I have an upstairs laundry room with kind of rails and everything like that. And I just love the fact that I don't have to bring anything downstairs. It all stays upstairs. So my laundry room is definitely the favorite room in my house because it keeps the rest of the house really orderly. So yeah, love my upstairs laundry
I'm
laundry room.
Just so you know, I'm very jealous of that because my washing machine is in my kitchen, which is quite standard here. Not a lot of houses have utility rooms and things like that.
Right.
So standard is having a washing machine in your kitchen. So
Yeah.
I am forever dragging laundry around. And of course, I've been to Leslie's house and the laundry room is like, oh, that's like my heaven. Now I would love
Right.
one. When I grow up, I want to have one.
Right. Yes. Well, if it's any consolation, I live in the States and mine is in the garage. So it's not that fancy. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing all of this. We'll definitely have a link to your book in the show notes. I think it's still on pre order here in the United States, but it's already out in the UK for any listeners there. And just appreciate you sharing your time with us today.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much for
much.
having us. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks so much for listening in to this episode of the Get Organized HQ podcast. Don't forget to go check out the Reset Your Home book that is releasing here in the United States in just a couple of weeks. It's available for pre order right now, and it's already available in the UK. The link to that is in the show notes. And I can't wait to see you right back here for next week's episode.